Coming up on This Week in Space, there's a new dwarf planet out beyond Pluto. iSpace is closing in on the moon. And what's the deal with Starship? Why does it keep exploding? We'll find out with Space.com's Mike Wall. So tune in.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 163, recorded on May 30th, 2025. The Trials of Starship. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of This Week in Space, the Trials of Starship edition. I'm Rod Pyle, still editor-in-chief at Ad Astra Magazine. I'm joined by my fellow space thug, Tarek Malik, who's still the editor-in-chief of Space.com. Hello, partner.
Hey, space thug. Well, I don't know how I feel about that, Rod. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm okay. I've been a thug for a long time. And today we have the very good fortune to be joined by Mike Wall, the Sam Spade of space reporting. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I'm good. Yeah, I was looking up like ace reporter names from the pulp era, and Jimmy Olsen's all that came up, and I thought, well, Sam Spade sounds cool.
Jimmy
So
Olsen is a photographer. He is not a reporter.
No, he was a cub reporter.
I thought he was a photographer. He was a photographer.
AI said he was a reporter. Anyway,
All right.
Before we begin, as if we're going to, please don't forget to do us a solid and run away right now or as soon as the show is over, and make sure to like and subscribe and do the other things that will keep us on the air, because we love you and we know you love us, at least until what you're about to hear. And now, a space joke from David Barnard.
David.
Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Rod.
What happened after Doge audited NASA?
I don't know.
They launched a new wave of SpaceX employees.
Oh, that's too soon.
I was going to say, is that too
That's
soon?
too soon.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the week, though.
But, you know, as a person who was laid off in the round of layoffs prior to that for JPL, I feel like I have the right to make a joke.
He's done now.
We'll see how the hate mail comes in.
Elon is out at the White House. Today is like the last day.
Only it takes
That's it.
till he
Well,
takes a dose of ketamine.
And he's still staying on as an advisor. They are careful to say.
No. Well,
Sigh. Now, I've heard that some people want to blow our flight termination system when it's joke time in this show, but you can help by sending us your best, worst, or most indifferent space joke to twist@twit.tv. Until then, we're gonna continue on. And Mike, do you have any space jokes?
I do not. I don't want to kind of get on your corner at all, Rod.
it's not going to rain on your parade. No.
It's a lonely corner. You're welcome to it. All right. And now it's time for headline news.
Headline news.
Headline news. All right. I got it. Yeah, down now. I got it.
Oh, Scooter X tells us on the Discord that Elon's on live TV right now.
Yeah, he's talking to the president, getting the big sign off. That's today's big.
That thing. Oh,
Yeah.
the kiss, hug thing. Okay, Elon. All right. Well, instead, let's go to a space.com story, which is probably written by one of you two guys, about a new dwarf planet. But it's not Planet 9.
No. This is actually written by Keith Cooper, who's a UK-based space reporter, and this one is pretty interesting. By the way, he has a new book coming out. It's really exciting about sci-fi. But yeah. So these scientists have, I think they're at the Advanced Study Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, found what they say is a dwarf planet that is 16 times in an orbit that is more than 16 times the size of the Earth's. So it's like way, way, way out. In fact, the closest it gets to us, to the sun, is 44 and a half times the Earth's orbit, which is like Pluto's orbit. So the closest it gets is like Pluto's orbit, and it's even further out there. So it's like way out in the Oort cloud. And they call it 2017 OF, and then there's like a number at the bottom of it, 201. We can call it Bob. I think that's fine. But this is like an exciting discovery because, you know, is it a planet? Is it not a planet? Is it a dwarf planet? We went through all of that back in 2006 when they demoted Pluto. But the fact that they're still finding these new kind of roughly spherical bodies out there, bodes well for the search for other planets. Now, everyone wants to find Planet 9, and they said that it's out there beyond Pluto somewhere. But it sounds like this isn't it because the masses don't really add up. But at least they can rule this out. as not Planet 9 because it doesn't explain the perturbations that they've been seeing in some other objects. And we can look elsewhere. We know where else to look. So it is.
I got your perturbations, pal. As a show that I think this is very appropriate as a show that's hosted by two roughly spherical bodies. So there we are.
Speak for yourself, my friend. Although I'm a giant bald gas, there is that. So.
Oh, ew.
Is that an overshare? Should I not have said that?
Mike is looking at us thinking, I could have gone out and cleaned up after my dog in the backyard today, but instead I came on this show. Mike, feel free to weigh in on any of these, by the way, if you like.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I'm excited about the whole Planet 9 story is a pretty cool one. And I've kind of followed it from the outset. It's been a number of years now where they've been looking for it. And it's still just really crazy to me that there could be this giant planet that's like the size, it's basically thought to be about like Neptune sized in our own solar system, and we can't find it. If
Nibiru, it's Nibiru. Yeah. It's hiding behind the sun.
Yeah, it's going to cause the apocalypse in 2012. Oh no, wait, that came and went. But yeah, I think it's just another reminder that there's just so much cool stuff. And like usually when we think about like the sort of mysteries of space, we think about far away space, but there's even a lot of stuff in our own solar system that we don't have mapped out, which is just really, really cool, I think.
Yeah, I think that just to put this into perspective for people, the orbit of this object is something on the order of, I just had it up here. It's like 26,000 years. That's how long it takes to make like in orbit. And
boy, hell of a place to have birthdays, huh?
I know. And we were talking about Planet 9 earlier. 24. I was wrong. 24,256 years. In that case. It's as far out as 157 billion miles, as close to the sun as 4.4 billion or 4.14 billion miles. And the issue you asked that earlier about Planet 9 is that the existence of this kind of all by its lonesome seems like it's not in line with the model of what Planet 9 would dictate, that there would be these solo super extreme objects all on their lonesome, because the perturbations of that planet would have those things get a little bit clustered. And so that's what they're trying to resolve right now.
You love that word, don't you?
Clustered or resolved?
Perturbations.
Perturbations.
That's twice.
Yeah.
All right. And by the way,
you say it 3 times, it appears. So.
Guys, since it's a friends and family casual Friday with us, I think Tarek will just continue through the headlines after the break. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Psyche Switch. NASA has confirmed that it had to switch to a backup propellant line, which I didn't even know Psyche had.
Yeah.
To restart its Hall effect thruster, which is an electric propulsion system, which they had to shut down in April due to low fuel pressure. It was being starved of its xenon fuel, or at least the pressure was getting down low enough that it was a problem. But it'll still arrive at Psyche in 2029. Yay!
Yay! So, no, this comes straight from NASA. They've been trying to figure out what the issue was with this kind of fuel pressure glitch that they had on Psyche. This mission to a super, it's like metal, right? It's a metal asteroid that is a really valuable target. I think it's like billions of dollars worth or hundreds of billions of dollars. Anyway.
Well, you're just throwing those figures around today like nobody's business.
I know. We've written stories about how much it's worth. But this latest means that they've been able to swap from that, what they think might have been a leaky thruster line to a backup line that now should recover what they were hoping to, or that pressure in order to keep up the sustained thrust in order to get there on time. So, huzzah for the engineers. I think it shows you that the folks behind these missions are very resourceful and able to figure these things out. But it was a little bit of Psyche's not that old, and it's a little early for a glitch like this. So hopefully it's not a problem that's going to come back later on to bite them too, like at rendezvous, etc. So.
Yeah, and this is a really crazy object that they're trying to see. It is a metallic asteroid that we haven't explored anything like it up close, and part of the reason why we're going to see it, why NASA they've dedicated this entire mission just to this one object, is because it's possible this is like the stripped away core of like an ancient protoplanet. So it like could allow scientists like a way to kind of look inside planets. Like this is like the building block, or this is what the inside of a young planet might actually look like. It's just like a chance to see like the core of a planet in kind of broken down form. So it's just pretty interesting. And so, yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed that Psyche makes it, because we've never seen an object like this up close.
Stripped away
and for
core of
those
an
of you-
infant protoplanet is my new band name.
For those of you out in radio land, you got to listen to Mike, because he has a PhD in this kind of stuff. Tarek has a
different.
minor.
Kind of this kind of
Different
stuff.
but still.
Tarek has a minor in astronomy and his
Maybe if
bachelor's
it's-
degree, and Rod ended up drifting out of astronomy at UCLA after
Maybe if we find the
because it
lizard
was
people.
too hard. Okay, let's go to a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hold your thrusters. All right, let's talk Chinese rockets, because when I
Yes.
see Chinese rockets, I have to double check and make sure I'm not looking at SpaceX rockets. Why? Well, Chinese rocket maker Sepoch, which is, I think, Space Epic is what it's-
Space Epoch. Space Epoch.
Oh, Sepoch. Okay, well, that's even worse. Claims to have performed a successful ascent and descent, controlled vertical descent of a booster stage. By golly, that looks a whole lot like a smaller Starship first stage.
Yeah.
So this comes after a string of similar attempts by various Chinese private companies, quote unquote, because most, the way things work over there, they have hooks into the military usually, to do something similar to what SpaceX is trying to do with Starship, which is what we're going to be talking about later. And as we've seen with Starship, it looks like it's pretty hard. So it was interesting to see these guys apparently succeed with their test.
Yeah, this is really good. Actually, John, if you scroll down, you'll find there's like a little embedded Twitter video in there that for folks that are watching the stream to see. And this is, that's loud.
With sound.
Yeah. But this is a company that is trying to do what we've seen SpaceX do pretty routinely, right? They've got a vertical launch and a vertical landing. This is a stainless steel rocket, which is what sets it apart from maybe some of the past vertical launch, vertical landing attempts and trials that some of these companies have done. And what we're seeing is this huge stainless steel rocket kind of touch down, soft land in the I think the waters off of Hainan Island, and then it sinks, to oblivion. It looks a lot like the Terminator giving a thumbs up at the end of T2 to me, because you've got like the fire and everything. I like it. I think it's great. But it is a fairly advanced milestone for this company, Space Epoch, as they plan to pursue reusable rockets. Now, it does, when you see, there's some new photos of it online in the ocean, like in the water, and it looks like it's pretty rough. The fins look like they're really, really rudimentary and whatnot. But I think what they've been able to prove is that they've got the gimbaling right, because this was a launch from the ground. They shut the engines off, they relit the engines, they gimbaled them around to get a stable landing and a splashdown. So that's a big milestone in and of itself. And it'll be very interesting to see where Space Epoch goes to next. If they're going to go for full reusability or just partial reusability, like what SpaceX does with Falcon 9s, and then what that means for either commercial launches in China or government launches in China too.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it is. And I mean, it is pretty remarkable that there are like a number of these Chinese companies that are doing these sorts of things, I mean, trying to do reusability, which we've seen SpaceX kind of master. And you are right to say, they're like what a Chinese private company is quite a bit different than what an American private company is in this context, because a lot of these like Chinese public companies are they are kind of public companies because they are kind of sponsored by the government and like getting funding from the government. But still, all that being said, and the fact that they do tend to look to SpaceX for inspiration. This is not the first time we've seen like a very SpaceX-like rocket launch or be designed by a Chinese private company. I mean, and what we just saw is impressive, but keep in mind it's still a big leap to go from doing a test like this that goes maybe a few miles up to actually going to space and coming back down again and keeping the whole thing together. And also like having the system be mature enough to actually deploy a satellite or do something else, they're still a ways away from that. I mean, you think back to what SpaceX has done with Starship, this is kind of reminiscent of like what they did in the very early days with what's called Starhopper, the very first little thing that looked like a flying, kind of like a silo, basically like a little mini silo. So
a water tank, which they turned into a water tank.
They turned into a water tank. So that was like 5 5 years ago, something like that. I'll have to check. But so that's roughly the stage that these guys appear to be at. But of course, they can use what SpaceX has done to get a leg up and to probably move faster based on what they've seen SpaceX do. And
to be clear, this is a prototype of what they want to build called it's a rocket called Hiker 1, which will be a reusable rocket that can carry 10,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit. It's interesting that they're like one of like 5 or 6 different Chinese companies that are developing reusable rockets. So as opposed to like what we've got SpaceX, maybe some engines and Blue Origin right now, right in the US.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it does just kind of shine a light on what China is doing. China has become extremely very ambitious and pretty aggressive. I mean, if you talk to folks in the U.S. space sector and with the military space folks especially, they like talk about this all the time. You know, China is very overtly challenging American dominance in space, and you know, it's the whole ecosystem. It's not just military launches, but it's these private companies too that are sort of tied in with the military, albeit like one kind of step removed. But China is making big advancements. You know, they like just launched their kind of second ever interplanetary mission. You know, Tianwen-2, which is going to go to go sample an asteroid and then move on to a comet. They're actually looking to launch a Mars sample return mission in 2028. And they may actually get Mars samples back to Earth before we do, even though we've been planning that for a while, and we already have Perseverance that has collected these samples, but we're currently arguing over whether or not we have the money to bring them back. So it's all of these spheres, you know, I mean, military, space, and exploration. I mean, China is very, very ambitious and is doing a lot of stuff. So yeah,
I'm glad
something people talk about.
I'm glad Mike mentioned Tianwen too, because I forgot to put that on the list of big missions for this week. So
I'm so impressed, Mike, that you use the soft button called "inspired by SpaceX" as opposed to ripping off. But
yeah,
there's another company.
Way to look at it.
There. Yeah.
There's another company. iSpace, the Chinese company iSpace, not to be confused with
Japanese company.
Japan's iSpace, and they're building Hyperbola 9, which looks very much like Starship.
Yeah, and it's like a full size version, right, or close to it. Yeah.
Is that our next story, or is that something different?
No, that's a
another
different thing.
iSpace.
So, the next story is the actual iSpace of Japan, and this is just a fun one for folks who are watching, or if you want to chase it up later, if you're listening, because they have their newest photos of the moon from their Resilience lander. And as we meet in our next episode, dear listener, they will either have succeeded.
Dear listener, singular? We only have one
listeners, everyone, the legion of This Week in Spacers that are out there. As of our next episode, they will either have landed successfully on the moon or not. We're going to have that with you. But here is an image of the Earth, the full Earth rising behind the moon as seen by the Resilience lander. We are less than 1 week from their landing on June 5th Eastern time. It'll be June 6th in Japan. This is their second time trying to land on the moon, and that's why they've named it Resilience, because the company says that they are resilient and failure will not stop them. So, you know, best of luck to Japan in this next private moon landing attempt, and we'll see how that goes next week, next episode.
And finally, we have perhaps more Awowas coming.
Awowas, yeah. This is an alert to everyone. Just alert. You might, if you look up this weekend in a really dark part of the sky, you might see some awesome auroras. There has been there's a coronal hole that has been sparking, letting a lot of radiation and plasma out from the sun, and it's all buffeting us this weekend. In fact, there was a G3 geomagnetic storm earlier this week, which really rose levels. Now, we didn't really see a lot come out of it, but they're saying that there could be a lot more over the weekend. They actually put there's like a KP index that the Space Weather Department prediction group puts out, and they said that we're at like KP6 right now for the weekend. That's pretty high. KP7 is like amazing conditions. So just be on the lookout. You could be seeing auroras all the way down to like the northern states, maybe like the mid latitude ones, but we'll have to wait and see if that does in fact happen. If you want to maximize your chances, though, you got to get really far away from city lights. You want dark skies and, of course, clear weather. So hopefully no rain, because that'll ruin everything.
And that will probably put myself and Mike out of the running, because we both live in metropolitan areas that by the time you escape the light from them, you're driving into the light of the next one. And so, yes, a great week for solar flatulence. So let's go to let's knock out this next break, and then we'll be back to talk about nothing but Starship. Stand by.
Starships are meant to fly. Stand up and touch the sky.
We had, whenever you're done, we had our test.
That's Nicki Minaj, man. Come on.
We had our what's a Nicki Minaj?
Well, the singer of Starships. Okay. Let's continue.
Yes, so we had Test Flight 9, the highly anticipated Test Flight 9, which was not a failure, but not a success either. It had successful elements. They reused the Super Heavy booster with all of but 4 of its engines out for their second flight, which is pretty impressive. I'm just going to digest here. Went up, had a successful hot staging, which has been a bugaboo a couple of times. Upper stage reached the desired suborbital trajectory, and then it all started to come apart, as the audio and the video is about to relay to you. So this is good, but it's not what they're hoping for, right?
Should you want to start with me, or should we go straight to Mike? Mike is the one that wrote the story.
Mike's the smart one in the room, so why don't we just let him tee off?
Yeah, Mike, why don't you recount where Flight 9 rates in the retinue of Starship flights so far?
Yeah.
What happened?
I would say they would probably say partial success, kind of like Rod said, and they're always quick to say, these are test flights, Starship is a very ambitious project, and we're still in the development, it's still under development, so they don't expect perfect success and all this. And so there definitely were some things to point to as very positive signs. One of them is that they did refly Super Heavy, the giant first stage booster, for the first time, and that's a big milestone, because the entire point of this vehicle is to be fully reusable and rapidly reusable. So this one flew this past January on Flight 7, and it came back to the launch pad on that flight and was caught by the chopstick arms of the launch tower, and they refurbished it, took 4 engines off, put new ones on. But yeah, 29 of the 33 Raptor engines were the same as as Flight 7, and it did quite well. They also did some experiments with this booster on this flight, so they didn't try another chopsticks catch. So they kind of diverted it out for what was supposed to be like a hard ocean splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico, or are we supposed to call it what Gulf of America?
Gulf of Mexico.
They just said the Gulf, which I thought was very politically adroit.
We'll say that.
But so they were doing experiments with it too. They brought it in at like a different angle of attack so that there would be more drag on it to test out a new kind of landing strategy where they could use less fuel for the landing burn and stuff like that. And that seemed to work. And it like almost kind of reached the like desired end goal, which was the hard splashdown, but it kind of blew up during the landing burn about 6 minutes into flight. So that's probably mostly good for them, I think they would say. And Ship, the giant upper stage, it was supposed to stay together for about 65 minutes and come down for a soft splashdown in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Western Australia. And it like reached space, like you guys were saying, and it was on the desired trajectory, which was an improvement over the previous 2 Starship flights, where Ship, I would say it was disappointing how Ship performed on those 2 flights. It didn't hold together it blew up about 10 minutes into flight or a little less than that on both of those flights.
Yeah, very shortly after separation, I
Yeah, it didn't survive very long after separation, and it like rained debris down on the Turks and Caicos and on the Bahamas. People probably saw all those videos coming in from people in those areas with just like this huge artificial meteor shower streaking across the sky. So that didn't happen on this flight. It made it to space, but it didn't make it all the way to the end. They're trying to do experiments on this one too. They had these dummy Starlink satellites on board, 8 of them, I think, that they wanted to deploy as like as a key test to see that the upper stage can actually deploy satellites. That didn't work. They like couldn't fully open the kind of Pez dispenser payload bay door, so they abandoned that try. They were also going to do like an in-space relight of one of the Raptor engines on the upper stage, which has 6 of them. That didn't, they couldn't get that to work either, because they had an anomaly like around this time or where they kind of lost attitude control with Ship. And so
they said a fuel leak, they think, right? A fuel leak?
That's what they said during the launch webcast. And then when you read the kind of flight recap that they published after the fact, it doesn't really give a main cause. It just kind of says they had an attitude control error, I believe is the terminology they use. So I guess it's kind of TBD what caused it, but it seemed like leak was the kind of go-to explanation like at the time, but we'll have to see. And so they were not able to control it for landing, for splashdown, and it just kind of came back uncontrolled. And I mean, if you can't control how it's re-entering Earth's atmosphere, that's not great. It's going to break apart. Earth's atmosphere is going to tear it up. It's going so fast. So that's presumably what ended up happening. They lost contact with it 46 minutes into flight, and presumably pieces of it are now at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. But so yeah, I mean, it's a mixed bag. Like the previous two flights have been. On both Flight 7 and Flight 8, there were huge successes with Super Heavy. Both they did chopstick catches on both of those. So they've made big strides with the first stage. I think ship, though, still quite a bit of work to be done, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting, I mean, there was a big, like the kind of Starbase talk from Elon yesterday, where he gave one of his kind of semi-regular, here's what our Mars plans and here's how Starship fits into them. He gave one of those talks yesterday, and it's very ambitious. We can like talk about that some if you guys want to, but I think on these flight tests,
let's point out in the past, every year he's given these talks and they've been live, right, with reporters there. This was not a live talk. It seems like it was recorded. And
it was definitely
shared
recorded.
later.
I think he wanted to make sure that they were able to do what they always do when you visit Hawthorne, which is they put the press in a little tiny box up in a riser and then shove 80 SpaceX employees in front of you that go, yay, yay. But yeah, that talk was a little reminiscent of 2016, I thought.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we were told there was going to be the update prior to the Flight 9 launch, and then there was just no update. Like after after launch, we didn't really hear much about the talk. It just didn't happen, and then Elon said on X that they were gonna air it shortly, and then they ended up posting up. It's like a 42-minute video. They ended up posting it on X yesterday. So I'm not sure what went into the decision of how to kind of broadcast it out, but it like did seem recorded, and it was a presentation to SpaceX employees at Starbase. There are probably a few select reporters who were invited to see it, but it wasn't like a general call to the press or anything like that.
But not Tariq Malik.
Tariq did not get I didn't get an invite. Tariq didn't get an invite.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure it was lost in the mail. I'm sure I'll find it in a little bit, right?
Well, thanks, Mike. That about does it for this episode. Just kidding.
No, sure.
I have to say, I was watching on a couple of my favorite space groups on Facebook and elsewhere. I'm old, so I still use Facebook. Waiting for somebody to say it, and they said it about a half an hour after the broadcast terminated, which was, it only took the Saturn V 2 flights, and then it carried people, which is a valid point, but you're talking about a massive, massive budget and a whole lot more people working on it, and the traditional cost plus budgeting for that. So obviously a very different creature, but one does begin to wonder how many more it'll take to get this right. Now, do you know when they're going to fly just Raptor 3s? Do they have a date for that?
I think like by the end of the year. During the presentation, Elon said that they're also working on sort of version 3 of Starship. What launched on Tuesday was version 2, like I believe. And I mean, version 3 is like the first like fully mature version that he thinks can go to Mars. Will be capable of fast reuse and be reliable and be able to be refueled in Earth orbit, which is a huge part of this whole project. You like launch these ship upper stages to Earth orbit. They do a rendezvous with like a tanker, which will just be like a modified Starship upper stage filled with fuel, and then they'll fuel up, and then they'll kind of jet off to Mars, hopefully in giant fleets of that. There'll be like hundreds of these things at once.
You said 1,000, yeah.
You said thousands, but yeah. I mean, we can talk about the ambition that is always kind of inherent to these talks, but yeah. So, and it's an entirely different vision. It's an entirely different expectation of what Starship will do compared to the Saturn V, right? I mean, when it launched people, it was launching 3 people. What like Elon wants to do is launch hundreds of people. He like wants to turn the Starship upper stage into a craft that can hold maybe 100 people. That seems ambitious, but dozens at the very least. And So there's got to be a whole like different type of life support. It's got to keep these people alive for months on the way to Mars. It's just another order of magnitude of complexity and like difficulty that's involved. And that's one of the things that you need to talk about when you talk about Mars plans. It's just like, I mean, you can't wave away what's going to be needed on this upper stage to be reliable enough to carry people. This what's currently launching doesn't have any life support in it at all. You know, it's just like a shell of a spacecraft, and that's
Right.
It's a big
Elon
spacecraft.
Musk told me in 2019 when I asked that question that was going to be simple and they didn't have to deal with it because
Just
they've
like
already
the-
done it on Dragon.
Just like
Yeah.
the dozens of tons of radiation shielding they need. Let me break in here for a second. We're going to run to another spot, and we'll be right back.
I wanted to ask about the pacing because it's currently it is May 2025 as we're recording this episode, and this was the third test launch that had some failures in it. The first two obviously failed in January and March of this year, and Elon said shortly after the Flight 9 launch that the next one that they could start launching in 3 to 4 weeks, which feels very soon, given that as of today, just before we started recording this episode, the FAA announced that they have to do another mishap investigation. And we're on a timeline where, you know, again, it's May 2025. NASA wants to have people walking on the moon by the end of 2027. And they still haven't
With the
done a lot of
Starship
other,
lunar
with,
lander.
with the Starship lunar lander.
And 20 refuelings, yeah.
And we still haven't seen anything about like refueling or life support or any of that. The Starship still hasn't gone around orbit. So I'm just curious how you see the rest of this year rolling out if they're going to try to do, you know, a launch every month or so, which would, you know, in 4 weeks, that's what we'd be looking at.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what they want to do. That's the SpaceX way, right? And that's why they're kind of unbowed by these difficulties that have cropped up on the past few Starship flights. You know, it's in development. Their whole model is fly it. If something goes wrong, then you fix it. That's how you learn, is by flying and seeing mistakes in flight with these vehicles. And they're churning out lots and lots of them. So I don't doubt that they could hit the like every 3 to 4 weeks milestone with the launches, but you know, they do still have to abide by the rules and the regulations, and they do have to do the FAA investigations, and they like do have to get launch licenses and like launch license modifications. So this ambitious timeline is not entirely up to them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how often they'll be able to fly, but I think they've demonstrated that they can build these things fast enough and test them fast enough that they probably can launch one every 3 to 4 weeks if like the regulations allow. But yeah, you know, I mean, we shall see. It's really hard to predict. They're incredibly talented. Obviously, SpaceX has done amazing things with the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy, so you shouldn't doubt their ability to get stuff done with Starship. It's just, what will the timeline be, you know? And that's obviously what NASA, I'm sure NASA is very worried about the Artemis 3 timeline 2027. They're probably worried about whether like the Artemis program is going to be allowed at all or going to be funded at all based on what we saw in the budget like a couple weeks ago from the Trump administration. They've probably got a lot of anxiety on a lot of different fronts about like kind of how they're going to explore the moon and beat China back to the moon, which they've been called upon to do by lots of different people. So yeah, it is an open question. And we'll just see. I mean, I wouldn't like bet against SpaceX based on what they've been able to do in the past, but the timeline thing is very difficult.
Yeah.
So I have an overarching question here. So we're talking. I don't think we yet have a number of tanker flights required for a lunar mission, right? It's still hovering between 16 and 24, something. Last I saw, their estimate 20.
It's pretty contested. You know, Elon Musk would dispute that, although
He says 8, right?
I think so. But NASA people have come out and said 12 to 16, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. At least, I think at least 16. So
yeah.
Given that, a two-part question. One, you know, this thing's filled with cryogenics, so it's loitering up there in orbit waiting for tankers. How quickly does that series of tanker flights have to occur? And the second half of that question is, do you see from what you guys have seen of Starbase, the newest city in Texas, how far are we from having the logistics to do that kind of cadence? Because this kind of harkens back to Werner von Braun's ideas about a space ferry, where they're going to fly it out of the Central Pacific off of a crummy little atoll out there, and we'd fly them 8 times a day and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't feel like it's that much closer than it was then, although, his cadence is pretty impressive. But we're talking about having to launch multiple times in a week, right? Because of the boil off?
That's probably true, but yeah, and so they're thinking about that already. I mean, there's already Starbase, but they're also kind of outfitting their Florida site for Starship too. So, and that will theoretically be up and running within like a year or so to host Starship launches from the Space Coast. So they'll have Starbase and they'll have Florida as well to launch Starships from in the relatively near future. So I'm sure that'll help a lot. And they're going to be building vehicles both in Texas and in Florida too. So that should help quite a bit. I mean, they are going to need like a lot of launches, but that's built into the system. I mean, if you listen to the presentation yesterday, Elon talking about sending, several thousand ships to Mars and back to Earth again every 26 months when the two planets align. That's built into the system. You can question how realistic it is or what the timeline is going to be, but that sort of crazy cadence and huge numbers that's built into the system. It's like built into their Mars settlement plan.
Okay, so I realize that none of us on the call right now are aerospace engineers, but one begins to wonder, can this really become the one size fits all space system, or is he going to have to come around to saying, okay, there are things it's better at and things it's not so great at, and one of those maybe is these requirements for multiple refuelings before certain uses. And I haven't heard how many tanker flights are required for a Mars flight, although I read somewhere it's actually less.
Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead, Tark. I've been talking a lot.
No, I was gonna say that actually came up in the presentation, Rod, that Elon gave yesterday, and he did say that a Mars flight you would need less refueling for that. But we heard that when friend of the show and president of the Mars Society, Robert Zubrin, was on back in March. He said that maybe they need a smaller version of Starship.
Oh, right.
And that he likes to call Starboat. I was at the Humans to the Moon and Mars conference this week, and he gave the same kind of presentation where he envisions a smaller Starship, 1/5 the size, to be the lander craft for Mars or for the Moon, and therefore you'd have a scale and use the Starship as the actual in-space depot that would fuel up the lander over and over again to be able to reuse it. But to your point about logistics and infrastructure, and I think Mike kind of touched on this, there's like 2 things that SpaceX says that they're doing to meet that. Number one is that they're building Raptor 3 engines like there's no tomorrow. They're already on like 30 or 40, which means
aren't they down to like 1 per day or something? It was 1 per week, and then I saw somewhere in a respectable outlet 1 per day, and I thought, is that possible?
I mean, they've got a system in place for all of that, and this is apparently their sleekest engine yet. And they're building what they call these gigabays, these ginormous kind of vehicle assembly buildings, to be like an assembly line for these ships. And so that's one way to combat the need for ships, is that they've got these giant production lines both in Florida that they're building, and the one that they have that should be coming online in Starbase. And then they've got two launch pads now, because they're almost complete with the second Megazilla in Starbase, and they're building one of those in Florida. And the concept that Elon said, and correct me, Mike, if I'm wrong, is that they would launch a mission into orbit, and then the booster comes back, they catch it on the Megazilla and set it down, and then they launch the next one to go up and refuel that one. And then that comes back, and then that booster gets caught, and then they move that to the side, and then the ship that did the refueling comes back. They catch that at one of those pads, tank it up, put it on the first one again, launch that up, and that's their whole big cycle, is just to keep doing that over and over and over again. Elon says that he wants them to be able to do it in an hour. That seems crazy. So
it takes longer than that to turn around a jet.
I know, right? But still, they have a concept of it, and like Mike says, if I had heard it, years ago, it'd be like, that's crazy. But we saw them catch the rocket. So we've seen them refly that rocket. So we'll have to see how it turns out.
Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting too, talking about, well, there are some people who are advocating for a smaller Starship. It would be more efficient, it'd be easier. That's not the way that they're looking. I mean, Elon talks about getting Starship bigger and bigger, and he in the talk he teased that the future version might be 467 feet tall. They like want to make it bigger because he's so fixated on, like, we're going to need 1 million tons of mass to Mars to set up a self-sustaining city. So we need the biggest, most powerful ship we can get. So that's what they're working toward, not like, I don't know, trying to find more efficiencies. Yeah, it's gigantic. So it'd be even more powerful than the one that we've got now, which is already the most powerful thing that's ever flown. So they aren't looking to scale down and make it more efficient. They're looking the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
So after Elon's venture into American politics, am I the only person here that thinks he probably wouldn't want to live in a city that was Elon town? I don't know. I'd be a little worried about that. But we could talk about that after the next break because we're due for a break. So stand by. Just an aside, and I've said this a number of times on this show, but I don't think I have when you were on mic. Did we ever talk about the Werner von Braun worst science fiction novel in history?
I don't think so.
So he, in the late 40s, while he was cooling his jets in White Sands designing ICBM nose cones, he wrote a science fiction novel called Mars, A Technical Tale. And boy, that title just fills you with lust to read, doesn't it? And it was so bad, it wasn't published till 2006, and I bought it immediately and started reading it, and indeed, it was wretched. But the appendix for that, which he spent a lot of time on, became the Mars Project book, which was quite well regarded. It was really the first technical workup, given what they knew then, of how you might do all this. But the best part of the novel, the most outstanding part, is when he's talking about the ruler of Mars, who is called, 1948, the Elon.
Yeah.
Which is just creepy.
Crazy.
It's
creepy.
Just creepy. So I imagine this big dome city, and he did, once again, he's another guy talking about, we're going to have these big domes on Mars. And it's like, because it's good to have a magnifying glass to focus all the radiation on you so you can be toasted in 3 days. I assume it's more complex than that. But what interested me in this talk, I mean, normally I'll see a headline about Elon and it's, kind of tearing him up a little bit and what's he saying and what's all this. Usually when I listen to the whole thing, it makes more sense. And he comes across as being more thoughtful and more with it than he would in some of his tweets and so forth. This talk yesterday, a little less so, I guess, but just because so much of it felt like a repeat of the starry-eyed, we'll have it done in 6 months, no problem. And I want it to be true. I'm not fond of his politics, but I want it to be true because I want him to succeed, because other than Bezos in his very much slower paced way, nobody else has ever tried to do this. And it's a remarkable thing that one guy said, I'm going to build this rocket that is going to outfly and outlift and outperform the Saturn V over and over and over again. And I'm single-handedly going to build a city on Mars.
Well, and it's not just one guy. It's also like the richest person who has ever lived, basically. So he has the resources to do it. And
that does make a difference. Huh?
Yeah. And to say it's just Elon too, we should give more credit to the SpaceX engineers and all these. They have so many talented people there who are making this happen, and all of that. Yeah, all of the craftsmen and all the folks down in Starbase who are welding these things, and they're doing yeoman's work.
Well, and Gwynne Shotwell, for God's sake.
Yeah. So
she's holding that thing together.
They have so many talented people, and like it's
plus some people from NASA as well. Kathy Kerners, and
Gerstenmaier.
Gerstenmaier,
yeah. And so it's, part of it is there's a tendency just for Elon to be conflated with SpaceX, and he
kind of
tends to do that. He tends to do that himself. Like he's the lead rocket engineer. I think he has said that multiple times. But we should give credit to all the SpaceX people because they're very talented. But I also want Starship to succeed. I also want a very bright future in space where we can have this amazing rocket that can send people to Mars and to Enceladus and to Europa and all this stuff. Like we all want that sci-fi dream to come true. I think for the technical people or the like folks who are a little bit more skeptical, it can be frustrating to kind of listen to these presentations and just say, it just seems kind of blithely like, like you were saying, Tarek, oh, we don't have to worry about the life support because we figured that out with Dragon. It's like, Dragon is a great vehicle, but it's very different from Starship.
It's a golf cart. Yeah.
By the way, as we're recording it, today is the 5-year anniversary of the first commercial crew of Demo 2, the first time SpaceX ever launched astronauts into space. That was 5 years ago today. We were in the middle of a pandemic. So.
Yeah, no, it seems like just yesterday, and also like 100 years ago in certain ways. It's just crazy that it's been 5 years.
Can I point out something though about the talk?
Sure.
Because Rod, you kind of touched on something that this talk sounded like it was a lot more review than anything new. And I there was some meat there. There was some timeline stuff. There was some discussion about the new version of Starship. But I was just struck right now when we were talking about this, about the fact that it is more review now with this talk than new. Means that they've got a lot actually happening. There was a point in the talk where Elon is talking about how we needed to shift to the hot stage, and then he just points right next to him, which is the new hot stage design for the so
which is very Soviet looking, by the way.
Well, yeah, they and I think that is a key difference that just struck me now in hindsight, is that compared to, again, like to that 6 years ago when I was there in 2019 and saw Starship 1 just standing up there, which sadly is no more.
Name dropping. Good Lord.
I know, right?
I said one.
Oh yeah. So between then and now, they have gotten a lot more under their belt, and so the shape of what it is, people know what that's like. They've seen it launched now 9 times, and so they're familiar with that. And so now it's like just talking about iterating that and making it, X inches longer, making it whatever, the thrust, engines, this, that, and the other. Rolling out the V3 will be very interesting with the new Raptor engines.
Well, let's say version 3, because V3 sounds dangerously.
Yeah, version 3.
Dangerous in World War II. Okay, I have 2 points I want to make. First one is I've decided, after listening to Mike for this better part of an hour, that we need to nominate him for a Space Pioneer Award, because if they'll give you one,
I know, right?
Or me, for God's sakes.
I don't know if he wants to be part of a club that'll have us as a member. So.
It's National Space Society's next to highest honor. So above that is the Werner von Braun Award, which is sitting in the lobby of SpaceX under Lucite. But Mike, I think we should get you one of these little metal globes. My last question is, Mike, where is your confidence at this point about the lunar Starship actually being the lander of choice for Artemis 3 or 4, with Blue Origin hot on their heels?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've definitely got confidence in what we've seen from Blue Origin so far. They've already launched New Glenn, and they're very capable people. But I would still bet on Starship, just because it's already flown. It's got 9 test flights, and just the amount of resources and the pace they work at. I'm not saying anything will be ready necessarily for Artemis 3 in 2027. I'm not saying that I'm just like blithely confident in like hitting that target date. But if I had to choose, I would probably still go with Starship, just because of the resources that SpaceX is able to deploy and the kind of monomaniacal focus that Elon has on this vehicle, and the ability and he's shown already that he's willing to put so much into this, and I think that's going to be the same going forward.
They're going to do it one way or another, regardless of it. I think that's the lesson to learn there.
Yeah,
I don't think though, Rod, to your point. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say maybe it'll take like 25 more test flights before, or I don't know, 50 more test flights before they put people on it. But yeah, they will launch them, and maybe it'll be 3 years, but they will do all they can to get it done.
Well, and I just have to say, I have, sorry, Tarek, but I have a little more confidence in the lunar lander. I mean, I'm not fond, again, non-engineer, I'm not fond of this tall, skinny design with what we've seen so far in illustration of landing legs, in terms of landing with stability on a very rugged surface. Mm-hmm. But, the nice thing is you're still, at least in the last plan I saw, you're still launching the astronauts in Orion, and they're meeting up with lunar starship either in Earth orbit or lunar orbit, riding it down, riding it back, and they don't have to re-enter in it, which is one of the scariest things about Starship is, when they're going to get re-entry settled.
Yeah.
So at least from that standpoint, it gives me a little more confidence. But man, 2 years is not very long.
It's not, and they've got a lot to do in those 2 years, and it'll probably how far they're able to advance will be dictated by how often they're able to launch test flights, because that's how they learn.
Rod, you're the expert. How long was it between Gemini and Apollo? We know 8 years from the
last
start
Gemini
to
flight
landing.
was 66, and the first Apollo flight was 67. That was the orbital Apollo 7. Apollo 8 was 68, so that was fast.
Yeah.
But, we were also willing to take a lot more chances then.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they weren't concerned about the astronauts alive, but this was basically a wartime footing.
Yeah.
And Apollo 8, by all rights, in today's world, Apollo 8 flew probably 2 years sooner than it should have, because it had one engine, the Service Propulsion System, on the back of that capsule to get them into and out of a lunar orbit. And if any of a dozen things went wrong, it was a simple engine, and it did have a backup igniter, I think. But had anything gone wrong, or it didn't need an igniter, but anyway, had anything gone wrong with that, they'd still be there, and that would be very sad. So those guys, when you talk to, I was interviewing former flight director Jerry Griffin about this about 6 months ago, and even he said we were just kind of going at warp 9 and nothing was going to get in our way. And like I said, it wasn't that they weren't concerned about safety, but they were willing to take much bigger risks.
Yeah.
That's part of the conversation too, was what is your risk tolerance? What's NASA's risk tolerance versus SpaceX's risk tolerance versus the Artemis astronauts' risk tolerances? And usually, at least in discussions I've had, the astronauts are the ones that are willing to say, just let us, here, send me a waiver, I'll sign whatever you got, let's get this thing going.
Let us do our job.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can count out Blue Origin just yet. By the end of this year, if everything lines up, Blue Origin will have landed their Mark 1 uncrewed lander on the surface of the moon.
Yeah.
Right? And SpaceX still has to do that with a Starship.
Right.
And if that goes well, they're in the landing, what is it, program or whatever it is, to be another lander along with SpaceX, and there was some other, like one other company, right? I
think Northrop Grumman was designing one, but
so
they were in and out of partnership.
Just keep an eye on that, because a decision point can come to say, hey, I know we said we would do X, but here is one that's already done it. And they've got their other rocket that will get there, and it's a lot easier and simpler of a mission. Let's do that because it's there and it's ready. And that is a race that we have to see if SpaceX is able to catch up on that, because it's a much simpler system. They're not trying to do all the free reusable stuff. We'll have to see how that goes. So.
Yeah, and it's just worth highlighting. I think that's really exciting that we have two of these private crewed moon landers that are in development right now and are planning to actually fly to the moon in the next few years. That's something to actually celebrate.
Plus China, Rod.
China's
right? We got to get there.
too.
China. We got to get there before China.
Okay, so this is another question for Mike. This is my last question for you, Mike. My contention is that China will take any risk. And I used to say short of loss of the crew, but I was corrected by one of the large minds in commercial spaceflight who said any risk, leave out the concerns about crew, to get taikonauts on the moon by 2029, because that's the 80th anniversary of the People's Republic. What do you think?
I think they're definitely willing to take more risks than we would. I also think you have to think about how embarrassing it would be if they lost a crew on a moon mission, though. So, I don't think any risk, because if they race to beat us and in so doing lose 3 people, that would just be a huge black eye. And I mean that I'm not sure that the Chinese Communist Party leadership would want to endure that. That would be really bad for them to lose face on an international scale like that.
Well,
so
I would agree, because they are riding high right now. They have landed the first missions on the far side of the moon. They have returned samples from the southern pole of the moon. They have done all these new things, success after success after success, and to kind of risk that momentum,
Yeah.
while they're kind of watching us struggle. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So,
and they're very capable, and I think they're only getting more and more capable. I mean, they've just built their own space station in the last few years, and everything works pretty well as far as we can tell. So
Right.
they've got a really good human spaceflight program that they've built just recently. So I don't doubt that they can do it, but I also think that they're not going to rush it, because failure would be a really, really big black eye.
Well, it's a lot harder to cover up now than it was in the Soviet days when they'd announced the success after it was successful.
Yeah.
Which-
No, you got all these amateur
It's a lot
trackers
easier.
watching every spacecraft and seeing what's happening everywhere. So yeah, really, really hard to actually hide like a big failure like that.
Well, I want to thank everybody, and especially you, Mike, for joining us today for episode 163 that we call The Trials of Starship. Mike, remind us where you can get your book, because we didn't talk about it out there.
I don't know. I'm sure it's still in some bookstores.
I don't know, he says.
It's like
You
six-
follow your publications the way I follow mine. People ask,
well,
"Is that
it's
still in
like
print?"
it's
I
like
don't
6
know.
years old at this point, so it's probably
Yeah.
still around somewhere. But yeah,
Are you?
I have a signed
Are you
one on
close
my
to
desk.
retiring on your royalties yet?
no. And then what? Just be a full-time podcaster? No.
I'll be a full-time book writer. I did that for a few years. It was horrible. Who was the publisher?
What? Yeah, it's actually Hachette.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like it was
Well,
an imprint of.
I mean, at
Hachette.
least you went with a major publisher. It wasn't like it was Bill Finkelheimer's Publications or something.
No. It was like a real book deal and all
So
that.
they
It
did
wasn't,
a
it
real
wasn't like
rollout?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't self-published or anything. But I would just miss Tarek too much if I retired and just sat in a cave pounding away at a keyboard anyway. So.
yeah, that's great. I
Really?
miss me
Would
too.
you?
Yeah.
So you're just saying that because he's on. Boy, no comment. Okay.
No,
Mark, where can we find you flying suborbital?
Some people
these
know
days?
which side the toast is buttered. Is all I'm saying right there. No. You can find me at the Twitter at space. At space.com.
Spacetron Plays.
At space.com, as always, on X, and Blue Sky at Tarek J. Malik. If you like video games, at Spacetron Plays, although I'm going to be away for a few days because I'm going camping this weekend. You will find me in the mountains trying to catalog, I don't know, bugs or whatever, and hopefully seeing the Northern Lights. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
I have a hard time picturing you camping. You're so adverse to discomfort, but
I
have
am
a good
an
time.
Eagle Scout, my friend. I grew up camping.
Okay. And don't forget, you can join Tarek and me, and I wish Mike Wall would join us, at the International Space Development Conference in June, where we plan to record a live episode of this fine show for your heckling delight. It's in Orlando from June 19th to the 22nd. I'm sure, Mike, that Tarek would be happy to pay your way to attend. Get more information at isdc.nss.org. And of course, you can always find me, if you should be so misguided to try, at pilebooks.com, my increasingly aging website, or at astromagazine.com. And remember, you can always drop us a line at twis@twit.tv. That's twis@twit.tv. We love getting your comments and suggestions, and we answer each and every email. New episodes of this podcast publish every Friday on your favorite podcatcher, so make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews. We'll take 5 of whatever their denominations are. And don't forget, we're counting on you to join Club Twit in 2025. As I say every week, besides supporting Twit, you'll help keep us on the air with our great guests and my horrid jokes. And it's very important. You can, once again, buy annual subscriptions. So I say go there, click the button, provide them with whatever information they need. John looks like he's queuing up to tell us exactly what's needed there.
But also,
Join the club.
Officially tomorrow, price increase goes up for the club.
It's
Officially.
tomorrow?
Last chance, Charlie's.
Wow.
June 1st.
They're only going to have a few
That's
hours.
not tomorrow.
Okay.
That's Sunday. That's 2 days from
Oh,
now.
is it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr.
You
Chrono.
get the idea anyways.
No PhDs besides Mike's on this show. And don't forget, you can follow the Twit Tech Podcast Network. Yeah, at Twit on Twitter and on Facebook, at twit.tv on Instagram. I stepped in that one. Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you, as always, next week. Ta-ta.
No matter how much spare time you have, twit.tv has the perfect tech news format for your schedule. Stay up to date with everything happening in tech and get tech news your way with twit.tv. Start your week with This Week in Tech for an in-depth, comprehensive dive into the top stories every week. And for a midweek boost, Tech News Weekly brings you concise, quick updates with the journalists breaking the news. Whether you need just the nuts and bolts or want the full analysis, stay informed with Twit.tv's perfect pairing of tech news programs.